Shamanic practices for interdimensional travel. How shamanic journeys will evolve in 5D. We're going to talk also about soul retrieval versus light being activation. Stay tuned for the whole video because we are going to go through a list of some really important things, understanding what shamanism is traditionally and where I think shamanism will be going, which we are beginning to experience here in the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. If you're new, this is the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel, the gathering place for all 5D star seeds and light workers. And if you appreciate these videos, please go to thunderwizard.com. It's the Patreon site. Higher dimensional energy practices, personal mentorship, spiritual counseling, live Zoom group classes. My books can be found at michaelwilliamdenny.com. And if you subscribe to the Interdimensional Meditation or above, you will get the Prosperity Guided Interdimensional Meditation for free. If you're interested in the other interdimensional meditations, you can go to meditations.thunderwizard.com. And the most important thing that I'd like for you to be a part of are these live guided interdimensional meditations that we do every Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. They're free. If you can't make the live stream, you can go ahead and simply go to the live tab on the YouTube channel and you can watch any of the archived videos. If you appreciate this and you want to support me directly, you can go to support.thunderwizard.com and follow the instructions. All right. Shamanic practices for interdimensional travel. I believe that everything is going to shift. It has already shifted for me, and I want to talk to you about soul retrieval versus light being activation. All right. So I suppose the best word that we can use for the practices that we're doing on this channel, we can probably start calling them interdimensional shamanism, because that's really what it is. You know, shamanism, now there's the actual traditional understanding of shamanism and what people think shamanism is. So what people think shamanism is, which has become the de facto definition for the public at large, is being able to travel to different realms, perhaps to channel other beings, communicate with other beings, being able to communicate with plants and animals and all of that. That is the traditional understanding of the word shamanism. That's not the traditional understanding. That is the general modern understanding of shamanism. The traditional understanding of shamanism is a little different, and not everybody knows what that means. So we throw this word shamanism around, and we're actually using it incorrectly. So the correct term for shamanism would be animism. By the way, I've got all this written in my books. I've got all kinds of books on shamanism and all that kind of stuff, which again, you can find if you go to michaelwilliamdenny.com. You'll find all my books there. And I have books specifically just focused on different types of shamanism. But the actual word shamanism does not mean traveling to other realms or channeling beings or doing soul retrieval. The word shamanism doesn't mean that. A shaman is merely a word for the Tengarist religion's priest or priestess. So the Tengarist religion is the indigenous religion in Siberia. And it's called Tengarism because the sky god they call Tengar. And it would be Tiu. There's probably some linguistic connection, but Tengar, Tiu, It's the same root. And so they're talking about the sky god, the sky father. And it turns out that the Tengarist religion is animist. So animism is actually the more appropriate word for what we call shamanism. Animism is simply the belief that everything has consciousness, that everything has a spirit. And therefore, since everything has a spirit, everything has a personality, that means everything can be communicated with. So what they're really saying is that there's a quantum field of consciousness that pervades everything, which means that every manifested thing is coming from some manifestation from consciousness. So obviously animals, people, spirits, but rocks, plants, trees, clouds, the wind, water, oceans, things that don't really have an independent identity like an animal or a person, but even that you can communicate with. So that is the animist understanding. So I've talked about this before, and for a while I tried to change the term because that was 15, 20 years ago, and people were worried about appropriating cultures and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, I don't look. The word is shamanism now, and that's what it means now. Native Americans, by the way, people use the term Native American shamanism. What they're really trying to say is they're trying to say Native American animism. But Native Americans oftentimes will get offended by that because shamanism is a Tengarist word, a completely different religion, a completely different culture. And the word shaman just means priest. So shamanism literally means priestism. So when people say Native American shamanism, they're throwing in a word from another language about a different culture and a different religion. But that's really appropriation when people don't understand that kind of stuff. But as it turns out, there's neo-shamanism. So neo-shamanism is the if you run into your average, like I remember once this was a long time ago, but I ran into somebody who claimed to be a shaman, and I said, "Oh, I'm a shaman." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah." And then I said, "What discipline? What school of shamanism did you learn from?" They looked at me like they didn't know what I was talking about. I said, "So what is it that you do?" They said, "Oh, I guide people through plant medicine journeys," which means they're giving people hallucinogenics and they're standing by. So for them, shamanism was all about taking hallucinogens. And, people could argue that has its place. My personal experience is that plant-based shamanic journeys are a second best. The truth is, historically, like the Vedics. Now, I'm as you know, I really appreciate and respect Vedic religion. The Vedics used to use hallucinogens. In fact, the Vedas, the sacred scriptures, the majority of them were dedicated to Indra. And so what would happen is they would take different plants and put them together. Ephedra, I don't know what else. They might have taken things like cannabis and other things, but what they would do is they would take them and they would do rituals with them. They'd put them in the moonlight on certain days and chant mantras, and then they would mix it all together, and then they would have soma. Now, today we don't know what soma was. We don't know anymore. People can guess and they throw things together, but it was a mix of different plants that were hallucinogen. And they would go through this ritual and they would chant mantras and go through, light the candles and on a certain day and all that, and they would drink the soma. And then they would channel Indra. And the idea was that, Indra drinks the soma just like Thor drinks mead. This is what gives him his power. and it represents the moon, and it represents all kinds of other things which I've talked about in my books and other stuff. How many of you on my channel have bothered to read my books? How many? There's so much information that I provide. If you're just watching the videos, again, you're wasting the vast majority of what I offer to you. So if this is interesting, read my books. You'll learn so much. It's then I won't have to go through scolding you because you left a comment on my channel showing your ignorance of what I teach. Read my books. There's a lot of information in there. So what they would do is they would drink the soma, and then they would channel Indra. And what happened is that's where the Vedas came from. Then they would go into trance and they would begin singing these mantras, and the mantras were the Vedas. Like the Triambakam mantra. It's actually, it's a Vedic, chant that's been taken out, and now it's used specifically as a mantra. Triambakam yajammahe sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanan mrityormukshiyam amritat. It comes right out of the Vedas, and this is what somebody was channeling as a result of that. The Taoists are said to have used cannabis, but bear in mind the cannabis that the Taoists were using were probably 3%. And what is the percentage of THC that people get now? So people think now that the weed people get from your dispensaries is so concentrated. It's nothing like it was. They would just grab it out of the ground. It was just growing wild like a weed. They'd process it. And so we're talking, 3% THC, very mild. So the Taoists and the Vedics used plant medicines, but they stopped. Both of them stopped. Why? Because they then started creating the practices. Kundalini, once they started doing Kundalini yoga, once the Taoists started doing Qigong, and they started learning how to interact with the life force energy without using some kind of hallucinogen, they discarded it. So if they discarded hallucinogens, it means that they were saying that this is a lesser practice. It doesn't have the same power. They've evolved. They no longer need it. It's a crutch that isn't needed. My experience, you guys, I've uploaded some videos about crazy stuff that has happened to me. The level of TMT that's going through my brain and some of this stuff I'm sure is off the charts. And I don't use any hallucinogens. And I wouldn't even think of using hallucinogens. So it's completely unnecessary. It means we've gotten to the point where we don't need it anymore. But this is some very old school shamanism that we don't need to do anymore. We now are in a new phase. The new 5D phase is we don't need anything outside of us. The reason why I don't think that plant-based teachers are a good idea is because the mindset is you're already devaluing yourself because you need something outside of you to give you the ability to connect. A substance means you're saying you don't have the power within you. But when Kundalini Yoga was invented, and when Qigong was invented, when those things came about, that went beyond it, and humans were able by themselves to open up the chakras, to open up the meridians, to open up the dantians, and use that to have these practices. Now, here's another difference. Another difference is that if you do these practices without any external aid, the internal cleansing process will be even more intense. Now, as I said in the video I uploaded this morning, responding to people's comments trying to fix me because I'm off on this crazy shamanic journey and I'm making a video while I'm still experiencing it. What we have been told is enlightenment, in my experience, is nonsense. that whole idea that enlightenment is you get rid of all of your negative feelings and you live in this place of bliss. Now, don't get me wrong. Practices I do will put you in a hugely blissful experience much of the time, beyond anything that you'll experience again with a hallucinogen. You'll have more DMT going through your brain than you could get if you drank a bunch of ayahuasca. Much more. And you don't do the damage to your body that hallucinogens do. Oh, by the way, when you take hallucinogens, like you take DMT or anything that has DMT, you tell your brain to stop producing it. So it actually puts you afterwards in a deficit. Whereas if you do these practices without any external stimulant, you are training your brain to create DMT on demand. And so again, that's what we want. I was talking about something, I can't remember what it was. In any case, you get the deal. Interdimensional shamanism is we're moving beyond what our ancestors were doing 7,000 years ago. And we're going to move even beyond what I call third dimensional stuff, which is Qigong, which is yoga, Kundalini practices. By the way, Kundalini and Qi aren't the same. Kundalini, in my experience now, I believe, is a fifth dimensional energy. And we learned Kundalini from extraterrestrials who we would call Nagas. There are two types of Nagas. There are the Nagas that live at the root of all of the dimensions. They're extremely powerful beings. We go there and visit them all the time. And then there are actual Nagas. They have a planet. And they are serpent beings that are able to shapeshift into humans. They lived here on this planet. They taught us Kundalini yoga, and then I guess we came out of Satya Yuga, and human beings kicked them out, and they went back to their homeworld. So those are the two types of Nagas, just to let you know. My experience when it comes to enlightenment, that's what I was talking about. My experience when it comes to enlightenment is that enlightenment is nothing like what you've been told, where you meditate and you go to emptiness and you get rid of your mind and you get rid of your ego. People, this is nonsense. I've never experienced anything even close to that. It doesn't mean I haven't had periods of bliss. But even, when I was doing yoga, I was a Kundalini yoga, you could have even said I was a Kundalini yoga master. I was doing that for years. I used to teach it. And, the teacher of that tradition would say, yeah, you get your Kundalini up to your crown chakra and then you go into a state of bliss and people think they've reached enlightenment. That's only half the process. Because then once your Kundalini goes up and you go into nirvana or whatever the hell you want to call it, you come back, you then have to come back, and when your Kundalini makes its way all the way back down to the root again, then you can say you're enlightened. And so what ends up happening is you go to that place of perfection and then you have to come back down into this third dimensional reality. And that is harder. In my experience, that's harder than on the way up. So this idea that you're going to reach this, and again, I talked about it in the previous video, that desire to be free of the negative ego, and you think your negative emotions are something you have to erase. And as long as you're that and you're in a state of bliss, this is denial. And it's a form of suicide. It's denial. You're denying yourself your reactions. There is no way to evolve without going through the challenge of transformation. There is no way around it. Consciousness, what I've taught, enlightenment is this and this only. When you are fully conscious of all of your feelings, positive and negative, and you have the ability and the discipline to know what is best and most healing for other people and yourself, and you take the appropriate actions that are healing for you and others without agenda, then you are enlightened. You are in a state of enlightenment. But it does not mean that you are going to be free of all. You might be full of anger, fear, pain, suicidal, homicidal rage. You could be filled with the most intense feelings. Enlightenment is knowing what actions to take so that the other person is benefited. The other person walks away from their interaction with you feeling more empowered, more loved. Sometimes you tell them difficult truths. Sometimes you don't tell them difficult truths. The enlightenment is to know what is best for the other person. And I guarantee you, if you learn how to do that, it's going to be a very challenging experience. So let's get rid of that nonsense. If that's, listen, I know I'm shooting myself in the foot here because that's where all the money is. And I'm really trying to get my channel up and going. And, I can't lie to you. I can't lie to you. I have to tell you the truth. And I would love to be able to tell everybody everything they want to hear. And I'd know how to do it. The universe wouldn't tolerate it, wouldn't let me go through with it. But I know exactly how to make millions and millions of dollars telling people exactly what they want to hear. That's what cult leaders do. I'm not a cult leader. So no, enlightenment has nothing to do with getting rid of all of your negative feelings and being in a constant state of bliss floating above the ground. That's not enlightenment. You can have those experiences and you can get more and more of those experiences, absolutely. But there will be times when we do this interdimensional shamanism where you will be in both states. There will be a part of you that will be in huge bliss and your human part will be coming apart at the seams. Maybe you don't have to go through the same kind of drama I do. If so, my hair is off to you. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're talking about here. So traditional shamanism, traveling the three worlds. So traditional shamanism goes, the original shaman, by the way, I was going to say this, but people who way back, 20 years ago were appropriating Native American shamanism and they were doing Native American, sweat lodges and all that, which I've done. I've got nothing against, they're great. But the things that they focused on, the journeys, the shamanic journeys, all those things, that and animal spirits and totems. What people didn't realize, I found out through researching, is that is primarily a European practice. That's what my Norse ancestors did. There's a thing called sitting out, where you went out into the woods away from everybody and you sat in the woods until a spirit appeared in front of you and gave you something of power, and then you knew who you were and you knew what you were doing, and then you'd come back into society and you'd do your thing. It sounds a lot like some Native American practices that people do, doesn't it? But it's a European thing. Europeans had a thing called a fetch spirit, which means an animal spirit. And a shaman could tell you what your animal spirit was. A wizard, a Norse wizard, could look at you and see your aura and tell what your animal spirit was. But the belief was that if you saw your animal spirit with your naked eye, it meant you were going to die. But your animal spirit could come to you in dreams and in visions and guide you. Sounds a lot like Native American shamanism, doesn't it? It's completely European. So people were practicing, unknowingly, they were practicing their European heritage, but they needed to find some other name because, they didn't know that. I could go into how I found all that out, but that's, again, ancient history. So traditional shamanism, traveling the three worlds. So in traditional shamanism, you've got the three worlds. You've got the upper, middle, and lower. And so what people would drum and go into a shamanic trance, and then they would travel to these different realms to get information, to get healing or whatever. Well, there's a lot more than three worlds. This is a third dimensional thing. I think traditional shamanism, we're staying within the third dimension. Higher self, unconscious self, conscious self. And so that takes me into, let's get past this. So traveling the three worlds, finding food and healing. So the first shamans, this was somebody Somebody was talking to an Alaskan native practitioner, what we would call a shaman. And they practiced, the typical 3-world soul retrieval kind of shamanic healing and practices. And they said the history of shamans is that human beings used to crawl around on the ground and they used to eat roots and tubers, and that was their food. And then they were scavenging, animal corpses and getting, bone marrow and all that kind of stuff. And then they got to the place where they needed more nutrition, so they started hunting. Now, when they would hunt, they would need the shaman to tell them where the herds were. So shamanism was about eating animals. According to this person, the first shamans were human beings that would go into trance so that they could find where the animals were, and then they would tell the hunters, okay, up over on the other side of that ridge, or travel 2 days in this direction, or whatever it is. And then that evolved into talking to the spirit. Like if you wanted to talk to the spirit of the elk, so that you could bring elk to where you were, or have the spirit of the elk tell you where to go, or to, provide for you the elks to be eaten. Now this is interesting, because actually wild animals need to be hunted to be safe, to be healthy. Wolves, the reason why we shouldn't get rid of wolves out of the natural environment is because wolves hunt. Now, wolves don't do what humans do. Humans look for the biggest elk with the biggest horns, the healthiest ones, and they, arrow or a gun, and they take out the big one, right? And they take that one home. But wolves don't do that. Wolves take out the weak, the old, and the sick. What does that do? It strengthens the health of the herd so that the herd stays stronger and healthier. The wolves are actually working to help keep those animals strong. So shaman way back when would talk to the spirit of the elk so that the elk would come by, and then elks would present themselves and they would thank the elk. They would thank the spirit of the elk and all of that. So again, people get bent out of shape about hunting. There was a time when there was this understanding, and you were actually helping. So human beings, before they had horses, it's the same kind of thing. The only animals you're going to be able to take out are the weak and the sick and the old, and you're helping the herd. So I guess I'm sharing this with you because we spiritualize everything, but shamanism was originally a very practical. I need to eat. I need to find shelter. It was very practical. It wasn't highfalutin and spiritual, because there wasn't such a thing. The idea of enlightenment, the idea of salvation, the idea of spiritual righteousness is a very new concept. Only in the past couple thousand years that we've started thinking like that. It started with Buddhism, and then Christianity, and then Islam, and of course before Christianity, Judaism. That whole idea of righteousness, of salvation, of enlightenment, that we're evil and we need to move beyond. This is a Kali Yuga mindset. That's why these religions came out of Kali Yuga, including Buddhism. And I'm still going after people who have this nonsensical understanding, get rid of the mind and we're in a state of peace and everything is okay. That is Kali Yuga denial of your emotions. And that's why salvation, you need to be saved from your sins. Even Buddhists talk about salvation in a different way, but the same thing. And it all means you're devalued, your feelings, everything you are is devalued, but we didn't think like that. We go all the way back to the first shamans. They didn't see that balance. It was about balance and active balance and being a hunter and hunting animals and killing them and eating them. Actually, before you had horses and, chariots and, you just walk around with spears, you actually were helping everything. So they went on to say that that was the beginning of shamanism, and it turns out that they're right. In terms of evolution, human beings, proto-humans, just ate stuff out of the ground, and then they would started eating dead carcasses, scavenging dead carcasses, and then they started learning how to hunt, and then they started learning how to cook food, which had a huge impact on brain size. So your brain size is a direct result of human beings eating cooked meat. I'm sorry if that bothers you. A lot of people get bent out of shape hearing it, but that's the fact of the matter. So we might evolve beyond that. Like I said, I'm happy to evolve to a point where I'm only using sun. I'm so glad the sun is out. You guys saw it was snowing in the Panhandle. So just north of me, it was like, feet of snow. Crazy. And now finally the sun is out. I would be happy to be a sun worshiper and only get my nutrition from the sun. It's not the case now, but I'm open to that happening. So healing. So traditional shamanism, healing. Healing is you seek to talk to the spirit of the person, and you talk to the spirit of. The idea is that illness is caused by evil spirits. There's a lot of wisdom to this. I'll get into that. But the idea was that you would go and you would talk to the spirit, or you would drive the spirit out, or you would talk to the soul of the person. And, so the shaman was like a negotiator to go and negotiate healing and balance. I'll get into that more as we keep going. So let's talk about shamanic soul retrieval versus interdimensional soul activation. So this is a very interesting subject, shamanic soul retrieval. So let me just start by saying this works. Shamanic soul retrieval works when it comes to healing. I don't think what is happening is what people think is happening. Because it's all based on how we define reality. So reality will mold itself to your definitions. So it's not that soul retrieval isn't a real thing and it doesn't work. It obviously is, and it does. I wouldn't characterize it that way. I would look at it even more deeply. And the main thing is because it has to do with responsibility. So I am fully responsible for everything in my reality, which includes the state of my being. Now, as it turns out, I'm very healthy. I don't have any health issues. I don't have any physical pains. I'm 61. I'm technically a senior. The stuff I get in the mail, I'm technically a senior, but I have zero health problems. I'm not on any medications. And it's because I have, number one, taken full responsibility for my body and my health. I've taken full responsibility for my emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical health. And so I'm able to deal with imbalance when it comes up. And so my definition is that physical illnesses are internal conflict, imbalance that gets to a point where it's the imbalance, the energetic spiritual imbalance gets to a point where then it begins to manifest physically. And then you start having symptoms. By the way, go onto my Rumble channel, Thunder Wizard, and I've got some videos on there about some the most amazing natural medicine that exists. I can't talk about it on this channel, but go to my Rumble channel. I take that stuff also on a daily basis. Multiple times every day. So go check that out. I forgot what I was talking about. So yeah, so I believe my experience, I've proven it because I've had imbalances, physical imbalances that I would have been able to completely reverse by doing one thing, taking full responsibility, and then going in and doing what is basically a shamanic soul retrieval, which is I go in and I find out within me what the conflict is, and then I learn how to not just balance that conflict, but let me now define conflict. So internal conflict is a conflict between your soul and what people would call the ego. So the soul is not bound by anything physical, and your soul, unlike what you've been told, is not this thing that's just sitting here peacefully. Your soul has come here with a very intense desire, a very powerful desire to experience something for its own enjoyment. And if you get in the way of that, then you will be in conflict with your soul. So a lot of people want to get rid of like people want to get rid of, when I hear people talking about cancer and they want to get rid of the cancer, they're missing what's going on. The cancer is merely just an expression of a conflict. So even if you were to get rid of the cancer, guess what? It comes back. We find this all the time. People get free of cancer and the next thing you know, a week later, they've got it, or a year later. It means that the conflict hasn't gone away. So the way to get over conflict isn't to get rid of the bad stuff, just like get rid of the bad things, get rid of the symptoms. The way to get rid of the conflict is to find out what your soul wants that you're not giving it. And then give your soul exactly what it wants. And here's where the conflict arises. Conflict between you and your soul is your soul says, I want to do this. And your ego, which says, I want to be loved, I want to be taken care of, I need other people's approval, I need this from society, I need to be rich, I need to be famous, I need my parents' approval, I need God's approval. However you've been programmed, you are fighting your soul and you're wanting to get the approval of the world, and now you're angry. So there's an anger within you because your true self is saying, I don't care about that. And you're saying, shut up, soul. I want my wife's approval. I want my dad's approval. I want God's approval. I want the government's approval. The government, the narrative we've got is convinced you that if you don't do what they want, they're going to destroy you. And so out of a fear of dying, people will do whatever they're told. And so they live this narrative. This is, people don't know what their true soul desires, their career is. It's because they're trying to placate this evil narrative that's telling you if you don't do what we tell you, if you're not part of our system. This is why people believe in money. People think money is a real thing. People, my fiance, the love of my life, she passed away. And as she was dying, she was worrying about money. It was crazy. But money is a completely made up concept by the rich to control you. And then they make this thing up and they tell you, if you don't have this thing we just invented called money, then you can't eat, you can't live, you can't, And then you need that? Okay, well, you have to come work for us. You have to work in my widget factory creating stuff. And, if you do that and you live a slave wage where your entire life is based on going to work for me just so that you can survive, maybe if you're lucky, you might be able to, buy a house and a jet ski and, go to Vegas twice a year, but you're still living a slave life. And people worry about that. Like they need to have this job and they need to have this money. Well, that's going to create conflict. Look at what happens. For instance, I've talked about this before, but it's the best example I can think of, which is carpal tunnel syndrome. Who are the people that get carpal tunnel syndrome? People who have jobs where they have to move their fingers around, right? And if you ask them, how do you like your job? They would say, I hate it. But what can I do? I have kids and I have to pay the rent, I have to pay the mortgage, and I have to go every day. And so what ends up happening is that conflict goes into the tendons, There's literally nothing wrong with them. The brain shuts down oxygen to them so that you have tendinitis, you have inflammation, and then you can't, and then you have to be on drugs, and then you have to blah, 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 and your life is miserable. That is conflict. You're in conflict with your soul. And the biggest lie that we've been told is, if you do what you want, you won't be able to survive. That's the biggest lie we've been told. And the truth is, if you do exactly what you want, the universe will give you everything that you need and everything that you want. You might not be rich, you might not have, a huge savings. I mean, that's me, that's my life. I always have everything that I need, and I always have as much or even maybe more money than I need. But I'm traveling through one day at a time, and if I stop and look at each day, I've got plenty. There isn't anything that I don't have that I want. And I'm living the life that I want. So if that makes you uncomfortable, I understand. It makes me uncomfortable. But that's just my third dimensional nonsense. So conflict between your soul and your ego need to be loved and accepted is what causes imbalance on all levels. So shamanism goes to try and heal that imbalance. So soul retrieval, let's talk about that. So soul retrieval is when you go into a meditative state, and the theory is that part of your soul is lost. That's why you have to retrieve it. The theory is that your soul has become lost. Now, this actually works really well with people who have been abused. People who have gone through trauma and abuse. This kind of stuff can be really helpful. But you'll never be able to find somebody's soul unless they want to be found. So the soul being lost in some other spiritual realm, there might be some truth to that, but I believe that the unconscious is a universe. It's an infinite universe, but it's the unconscious. It's not the actual multiverse. It's an own little universe within each of us. And it's infinite. There are infinite numbers of worlds within your own unconscious mind. So what's really happened is that the soul or the identity has gone hiding somewhere within the unconscious. And so, you can go and do a soul retrieval and maybe bring them out, but at some point that person has to take full responsibility on some level. And so healings, here's what I've learned about healings. When somebody heals you, they really haven't done the healing. What has happened is that person is a symbol of your own higher self, and you allow that healer to come in and say, if you're a Christian, I command you, Satan, to leave, or, I command you to be healed, or the shaman goes in and coaxes you out. It's really a symbol of your higher self, and if you choose to come out of that hole inside of yourself, or if you choose to release that negative spirit that you think is attacking you, it's really just you deciding to take full responsibility, and the symbol of the shaman spirit coming to you is just you giving yourself permission to heal yourself. So the underlying assumption, I think we could evolve beyond, which is the shaman isn't doing the healing. It's the person's soul. The shaman is, the person is really allowing the shaman's energy to meet them in that place where they're hiding within their own unconscious. It might be a lower world, they'll call it this lost in the lower world and all that. That's just your unconscious mind. And you're just allowing them in. So faster way is just to take full responsibility. Interdimensional soul activation. So shamanic soul retrieval, I would definitely say, is a third dimensional experience. The shamanic, what do I call it? Interdimensional soul activation. So my reality has completely, totally been transformed on a level I can't even begin to describe. And it is a direct result of me choosing to reach out to higher dimensional, initially extraterrestrials. Excuse me. And so interacting with higher dimensional beings and then being exposed to higher dimensional realities has completely, totally destroyed all of my understanding about what reality is. And I have to say that if it wasn't for my interaction with these very powerful beings, I wouldn't be where I am. Now, if you talk to them, they're going to tell you a different story. They're going to say, no, Mahadeva's soul is extremely powerful, and he is now venturing out of his third dimensional reality. And so the truth is that I'm not as dependent on their personal connection to me as much as I was. I can now, on my own, go into places. And in fact, I'm finding as I'm doing this, if you're doing these meditations that we're doing, I'm telling you that the places that I'm going in these meditations, the light beings are coming back and saying, we've never seen anything like this. In other words, where I'm going, they're not taking me there. I am apparently blazing trails out there in the astral realm that, other light beings that live in those dimensions are watching and shocked. Look at what he's doing. And they're even going, wow, you taught us how. The last one was a being came and said, you basically taught us how to shift our consciousness, and we want to take your idea and go further with it, But its point is still the same, is that we have to take full responsibility. And if we do that, there's literally nothing we can't do. There's nothing we can't accomplish. So the difference between shamanism and interdimensional, what I'm calling interdimensional shamanism, is that we're on a completely different level. And all of those things we understood, like all of the assumptions about shamanism, are being destroyed for me, and we're moving up to a new level. Religion as I know it is completely gone. I don't have any religion anymore. All I have is relationship with other beings, and learning to understand how other dimensions work. And it's more as much a science as it is a belief or a faith. It's got nothing to do with that. I'm not worshiping other gods and having them do stuff for me. None of that is happening. It's a completely different world. So you've got to be able to get rid of all of your third dimensional attachments and your third dimensional dependence on things outside of you in order for this to work. And if you do that, you're going to go through a lot of challenge. You're going to go through a lot of, dare I say, emotional, psychological trauma. That whole nonsense of you're going to get to a place of bliss and float around like, your farts are gold. That's not going to happen anymore. Now you're going to have to face the challenge of every time you shift from one dimension or another, your reality and your personality is going to get warped and torn into shreds, and you're going to have to figure that how to navigate that. And we saw, I consciously made a video while I was still coming down off of that experience, and look what happened. People got all freaked out. Now just do this. Just take a deep breath. Just get rid of your ego. They had to fix me. Nobody actually talked about what I talked about. Nobody commented in that video about, wow, that's really amazing that you did this or that or that. They're not commenting about the craziness. They were just commenting about how, how intense and how strange and how shocking the whole experience was. Anyway, let's keep going. So, all right, I pretty much already talked about shamanic 3 worlds being internal third dimensional experience, whereas the interdimensional 12 dimensions is completely different, and we're basically just starting. So we can call interdimensional shamanism a new science because we're just getting started with this. And so I don't know everything there is to know about all the dimensions. I'm nowhere near that. But this is where we're headed. And I think this is where spirituality is going to go. And this is where the light beings are. The role of dimensional light beings and how they are shifting in roles. So up until now, light beings have been the angels. They've been the guides. They've been the spirit guides. And they've done that. They've come to us in the form that we understand, and we had to turn them into these things. Elves, angels, Elf, by the way, just translates to light being, in case you didn't know. Elves, angels, spirits, gods, whatever, these are beings that live in higher dimensions that are coming to us. Our family, they're coming to us from a higher dimension trying to help us, and so we've turned them into whatever we've turned them into, and they let us do that. They let themselves be seen. I'm not kidding you. You're not going to like it. They allow themselves to be seen as Jesus. They allow themselves to be seen as Buddha. They allow themselves to be seen as any god that you would imagine. I don't think they pretend to be like one of your family members. They don't do that. But when it comes to, if you can't hear the message unless Jesus comes and gives it to you, they'll show up as Jesus. Actually, they might even say that they're showing up as themselves and you are projecting onto them whatever it is you want them to be. And I think this happens to people who have near-death experiences. Like, I know for a fact, historically, there was never a man named Jesus of Nazareth. He never existed. But people have near-death experiences and Jesus is waiting for them. Well, those near-death experiences, they end up coming back. So they never really go beyond their third dimensional understanding. And, but once you go beyond that, whenever you hear about people talking about near-death experiences, many times they'll say there was a door, there was a barrier, and I could tell on the other side of that barrier was all of the truth and the power, and the being will say, you got to decide. If you're going back, you can't go through that door, because if you go through that door, there's no coming back from that. But if you want to go back, this is it. But it's your choice. You want to go through that door or you want to go back to your lives? They obviously chose to come back. So they don't know. Well, I've been on the other side of that door. And if you're doing these meditations, you're potentially going on. That's what happened last night. I went on the other side of that door. That's why my brain was going in so many, and I was having a hard time putting myself together. It's very difficult after that. I'm in two different places at once, and it's very, very challenging. Just breathe. It'll all be okay. Just have maybe some tea. Have a good thought. Yeah, well, you try going where I went and tell me that that's all it takes. Go ahead. I dare you. Anyway, so I don't know what I was talking about. So the light beings, their roles are shifting. And now they're no longer angels. They're no longer beings that are above us. Now they are equals to us, and we see them as they really are, like this gentleman right here. That guy, that's who he really is. That's his physical body. He's got a higher dimensional physical body, and he happens to have the body of a mantis. And that's who he is, and he's not hiding anymore. This is where we're going now. We're on an equal level with the angels, with the gods. And I have personal relationship with the gods. I do go for them for help, and if there's really a god that the closest I worship would be the mother-father deity, the yin-yang. I go to them when I really, like I would need, God's help. That's where I go. But outside of that, all the other beings, we're on the same level. They might be on a higher dimensional plane, but in terms of who we are, we're equals. I'm as much a god as they are. And so are you. This is how things are going to shift. This is going to be the shift in the, interdimensional light beings are going to shift in our experience in this way. This will be the next level of reality for us. So interdimensional meditation is best described as interdimensional shamanism. Shamanism, we describe shamanism as being a vessel to connect. And when I'm doing these meditations, I'm technically channeling, although I'm not really a channeler. But technically, that's what I'm doing. I'm explaining to you what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling, and I'm bringing you along with me. And I am the conduit through which, the beings that you're interacting with, I'm the conduit. And so that, by essence, makes me a shaman. And again, I'm trying to teach you to do the same. I don't need to be the only one that does it. I don't need to be the source. I don't need any of that. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people are where they are because they're allowing my energy to pull them into the energy that I'm going into. So I recommend everybody take a look at this. And again, if you're watching the channel and all you do is watch the channel and you think you know what's going on, well, I'm happy you're here. You're free to do whatever the heck you want. My personal agenda. My personal desire is that you start doing the practices. Those of you who complain about not having money, people, I get this all the time. I want to support the channel, but I don't have money. So make the decision that you're going to have it. And that's why I give you all of these tools to pay for. Because you're not just giving me money, you're actually paying for something that you want. You want the stuff I'm talking about? Go get it. Take the risk. Put yourself out there. You want to do the 5-element Maoshan practices? You want to learn what I talked about? You want to learn how to have the energy to destroy evil spirits with your bare hands? Go to thunderwizard.com, go to the shop and get those practices. You want to have the same experience I had last night? Well, you're going to have to do the opportunity meditation. I can't guarantee you'll have the same experience as me, but you want that? And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can go to meditations.thunderwizard.com, and I've got 4 of them uploaded. You'll get all 4 of those, today if you get that. You can go to thunderwizard.com and you can get the prosperity meditation for free. You can get the other ones individually in the shop. So, unfortunately, the way the world works now is that we still live in this money thing. So there has to be a give and take. You want something of value, you're going to have to sacrifice something for it. So take advantage of this channel. Don't just watch it, because you're missing out on so much if you're just sitting here watching. Now's the time. Now's the time to start getting what you want out of life. And you want more money? Well, we're working on that together. We do the prosperity meditation. You can figure out how to shift your insides to make that happen. So anyway, that's of course all there for you. And of course the thunderwizard.com, the thunderwizard.com site. There's all kinds of other stuff I haven't even gotten into. The Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, the personal mentorship, spiritual counseling, live Zoom group classes. And you can also support the channel just by hitting the $sign below. That's another way to do it. But most importantly, this is where we are changing the world with these meditations. And I encourage you to show up. Thanks to all of those of you who do. There's about 20 people. I don't know who they are, but there's about 20 people who show up regularly. And I've come to the conclusion that you guys are the powerful star beings that have shown up to work with me to bring about the new world. So congratulations. You want to wake up to your soul essence? You want to have the kind of crazy things that are happening to me? You want to have that? You want to find out that you're actually a god that creates entire universes and you're just in this 3rd-dimensional game walking around playing a video game? You want to know what that's like? I encourage you to do the interdimensional meditation at whatever level you can and want. Activate your soul and move beyond this 3rd-dimensional limited understanding. And when you start going through craziness and your mind's coming apart, I'm here for you. And that's, if you want a mentor, you can sign up for that. That's one of the things that I'm here to help you do. I was among the first. I don't know who else is doing this. I've never run into anybody that's gone through anything close to what I'm going through. I've never read about it. But I'm here to help share my experience and, help you as you go through it. All right. I'm done talking for now. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. I love you all. I know I give you guys a hard time, but know that it's coming out of love. That it's because I want to help, and I want to help educate people and bring them, do whatever I can to help evolve the species. That's all I'm trying to do. So don't take it personally. I'm doing my best not to take other people's stuff personally. So I understand. Anyway, that's it from me, guys. I love you all. Please take very good care of yourselves. And you know where to go. And I hope I see you guys tonight in about 6 hours. And please take care We'll see each other soon.